speech was actually said in Detroit, Michigan, and I wonder what would be the significance of the speech and so forth if he had never said it in Washington, D.C. But I remember that very clearly. My contact with Coretta Scott King came many years later. I was selected to represent the state of Tennessee and work at the Martin Luther King Center for Social Change in Atlanta. They selected one educator, or sometimes two, from each state, and I was the one from Tennessee. And I worked with Mrs. King and his sister, Christina King, and others to develop a national curriculum guide based on his strategies and his philosophy for nonviolence. So I had close contact with her. I remember when she came in the room and we were in her board room, and she walked in there and it was just like an angel had appeared. She just had such a charismatic, she's just a beautiful woman. And so I worked on that curriculum guide there and went back several times to develop that guide.
So Dr. Lewis Baldwin, of course you know Dr. Baldwin, mentioned this curriculum, I think, on a number of occasions when we had him on the show. And so you actually participated in helping to build this civil rights kind of curriculum that Dr. King, that I think was pushed all across the nation.
Yes, it was a national curriculum, and when I came back to Nashville, I used to give workshops on Keynesian nonviolence and introduce that into the metro school system, and it became a very intricate part of my teaching. Every student I had to learn the steps for conflict resolution, and I bet if you met one today, they'd be able to give you those steps and how to use them.
That was a very, very important part of it. As a matter of fact, you mentioned Dr. Bernard Lafayette. He gave us Dr. King's principles on nonviolence at one time, and I would imagine those are the same.
They're all intertwined together. So that was one way that the movement had an impact on my life as an educator. I was able to become a part of curriculum guide writing, and then to influence the young people in the school system.
Well, now you were in Tennessee when Dr. King was assassinated in 1968.
Yes, I was.
Now, why don't you say something over the last 4 or 5 minutes that we have in reference to that? Because I try to at least elicit from all of my guests at least some statements in reference to that. But what impact did that, after having worked in the movement for a while and having perhaps not worked directly with Dr. King, but certainly been influenced by Dr. King, what impression did you get in reference to that? I mean, what happened that day?
It was devastating. The first devastation came with the assassination of John F. Kennedy, and it was one thing after another. But it was like I had lost a member of my family. It was like all hope was gone, and where do we turn now? And can it get any worse? And I remember the troops in Nashville. I was living in College Hill at the time, had a little apartment up there, and I had to catch the bus, the Jefferson Street, to get from work home, and they would not carry us beyond Fisk University. So that's a long walk from Fisk to College Hill. And when I finally reached the TSU campus there at John Merritt Boulevard, they had barricades up, and the troops were there, and I just remember how angry I was, and I said, I've got to cross over. I said, I'm going home, but they thought the students would, you know, break into violence and, you know, have riots, and there were riots and things that occurred across the country, but Nashville remained relatively calm and in mourning. It was a sad event.
Yeah, that was one of the many things that happened during that civil rights movement. A lot of folks lost their lives, and I think that in your case, you were one of the fortunate ones.